Now, the first headline we got coming up on the right hand sidebar is a faithful take on Dracula. Now, this story comes to you directly from Screen Rant on how the Dracula reboot will be more faithful to the original novel than other adaptations. Now, director Karen Kasama, I hope I said her name accurately, teases her new Dracula reboot will be more faithful to Bram Stoker's novel than other adaptations made in the past. Director Karen Kasama has teased the Dracula reboot will be different from other adaptations of the source material. Kasuma was announced as the director of the new adaptation back in March, following the box office success of Blumhouse's The Invisible Man. The BBC recently aired a brand new iteration of the character in the series Dracula, which also premiered on Netflix in January 2020. The series, which was met with mixed reviews, followed the vampire's origins in Eastern Europe and contained several differences from the novel. However, the show included facets of the original story that other adaptations had left out. Now, I'm not familiar with this new series that they said that they have. I'm not familiar with it at all. But let's just continue further in the article. And but I do want to say I haven't seen the new series. I haven't known anything about it. I just now recently, in researching this story, saw a couple of stills. It looks interesting. Maybe something I may revisit down the line. But I'm not well aware of this at all. Now, to continue the article, the new Dracula reboot will be based on the beloved novel from Bram Stoker. The story follows Count Dracula, a vampire that relocates from Transylvania to England in order to find fresh blood and spread his deadly curse. As a result, a battle begins to brew between the vampire and a group of people led by a man, Abraham Van Helsing. There have been countless adaptations of Stoker's novel, including the 1958's Dracula starring Christopher Lee, 1992's Bram Stoker's Dracula starring Gary Oldman, which I loved, and more recently in 2014 Dracula Untold, which I haven't seen, starring Luke Evans. The latter created a new origin for the story for the iconic character, straying away from the story of Stoker's novel. Now, I'm not going to read the whole article, but they really go on to really delve into the idea of this one being more towards the book. Now, I haven't read the book myself. I've actually seen the Bram Stoker Dracula film from prior, and I loved it. So I can't really do a good and an honest compare and contrast when dealing with was it more faithful to the book than not. Now, I'm a firm believer in I like to see faithful adaptations from source material to screen as much as we can. It's called the adaptation for a reason, because if you do it verbatim by the book, it might not play out well in terms of space, in terms of pacing, but most importantly, time. A book that's written for maybe 400 to 500 pages might in excess be about a 4-hour film, maybe. I mean, you can't expect that to be the most appropriate business model, but I do feel like you could do faithful adaptations from a book on screen and omit things that you might not really need to be shared in the actual visual telling. That being said, the Dracula character in and of itself it far surpasses the book and its historical backdrop, to be quite honest. So you could kind of go anywhere with the idea of Dracula. Like I said, I haven't read the book. From what I've read in terms of their personal take, it seems that they have a better take on the film in terms of it was more romanticized in the film adaptation as opposed to how it was in the actual book. The book, from what I understood in reading another article from CBR, comic book movie news, where I actually first read the article before Screen Rat, they talked about how the book actually told the story of Dracula from several different points of view. He was more I don't know if a MacGuffin would be the perfect way to describe him, but he was basically, I guess, the idea of him was kind of where Todd McFarlane wanted to do with his incarnation of a live action Spawn. Spawn was never going to be actually seen on screen per se. He was more of a mythical figure in the backdrop. You would hear him. Of course, it would be told untraditionally, akin to way a comic book film would be, and he wanted to bring more scare factor to it. From what I understand and reading another article from where the director was coming from, was that in the book it was different tellings. It wasn't as romanticized, and it was different depictions. So you seen Dracula through several different lenses. Would be a very interesting approach to do the film if you really would like to see that kind of depiction. It would make for a very artsy type of film, and it would take a real seasoned director or a director that's their shtick to tell a good tale like that could be still cohesive and entertaining at the same time, that will garner more rewatches, which that's a necessity of the industry, of the film industry. I hate to say it twice, but the film industry is basically, it's a business, and it runs as a business. Money has to come in, and if you can't get an entertaining film out there, no matter how passionate you are about it, and no matter how much the critics may like it and may revere it, if it's not enticing enough to make people want to go sit down and pay to watch, then you're just not going to go anywhere. And that's usually the balance beam that you try to have in being faithful to material, but also putting your artistic spin onto it, as well as giving something that the audience would like, more than just making something that's just so subjectively for you that only you could understand with the painting that you're actually painting. That being said, I would like to just drop down to one last part of this article where we can get a little bit more of a response from the actual director. She goes on to say, in an interview on the Kingcast via Bloody Disgusting, Kazuma teased that her Dracula reboot will be different from other adaptations of the Stoker's novel. When discussing her approach to the reboot, she states, "It's a fairly faithful adaptation of Bram Stoker's novel." She goes on to say, "I think something gets overlooked in the adaptations of Dracula in the past is the idea of multiple voices. In fact, the book is filled with different points of views. And the one point of view we don't get access to, and all most adaptations give access to, is Dracula himself. So I would just say, in some respect, this is going to be an adaptation called Dracula, but it's perhaps not the same kind of romantic hero that we've seen in past interpretations of Dracula." And that's what we just talked about, which is going to be an interesting approach. But the fact that they want to take the novel, which has been more romanticized, to give it a more horror aspect, though she didn't say in this quote, but from what I recall from reading elsewhere, that's the aim that she wants to go in, and I think that's the perfect aim to go. The romantic aspects of Dracula has been around all the time, even if you have amassed the vampire in the film. Like, you can see that in not vamp, even not really vamp, even though they had there was sexual nature with the queen vampire in that Fright Night. There's always a romantic seduction type of thing going into it that makes Dracula come off more erudite or more like sophisticated, a man of sophistication and of romance. And this is how he usually seduces his victims, which tend to be, more often than not, usually a female, in terms of who he wants to be with him in turn, as opposed to just somebody for feeding. And with that being said, I'm interested. The question is, though, What do you guys think? Are you interested in a new adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula? Have you read the novel? Are there anything else you would like to educate me on that would make it a lot more fascinating, not just for me, but for the audience? Leave it in the comments below.